everywhere else. But let's get started. 115-111. The Suns win their 13th straight game. This had trap game written all over it. We'll talk about Deandre Ayton. We'll talk about the energy. We'll talk about the bench, Cameron Payne, all of it. Today's show, though, is brought to you by Truebill, the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for the subscriptions you don't want or need, and can even negotiate better deals on those you want to keep. More from Truebill later in the show. The man of the hour, though, Deandre Ayton, have to start there. 21 points, 14 rebounds in 33 minutes. I just finished praising the man on Monday's show, and here I am doing the same thing again. He tends to string them together. We know that. Often they seem to come on the road or in some of these very, very heavy stretches of play. I don't think that's a coincidence, honestly, because I would say I was kind of thinking about this during the game because, again, double-double everywhere. We'll get down into even some of the nitty-gritty of the new things that we really kind of saw from him today. One of his better games as a scorer and playmaker. So I'll touch on that. But just from an overall perspective, I kept thinking about the start to the season for him because it wasn't what I was expecting. I very much made my position known that not getting that max contract offer from the Suns in those negotiations was going to light a fire for him, that it was going to be a carrot for him to chase. And he has always been this externally motivated guy. And I thought this could be the motivation that he needed. And it did not start out that way. Now, I do wonder, that leg, they called it a leg contusion, and he missed a couple games, and then he came back, and then he missed more games. I wonder if that was lingering to start the season. I'm not necessarily sure, but that seems to be possible because of the lack of energy and just burst that he started the season with. He just didn't look like the guy that we know can control games, and he showed that to us tonight. So obviously, Monty was very clear about the fact that they held him out for some of those additional games because they knew they could keep winning with Frank Kaminsky and how well he was playing, but also because they wanted the conditioning element of Deandre Ayton to be there for them. And that has certainly returned. He looked like playoff Ayton tonight. He really, truly did. He just controlled the game. He played with that level of force that we got used to seeing. I don't know if I want to say we are used to it because it does seem to come and go sometimes, but it was consistent throughout his 33 minutes. He did get 2 fouls in the first quarter, but he cleaned that up even. No blocks, which is, I think, a little bit of a road arena box score statistician screwing him over there because he controlled the paint. He controlled the rim as a defensive player. Jakob Poeltl did very little until the very end of this game. He was quiet. They didn't really have, Drew Eubanks is nobody's idea of a fearsome big man. He didn't have much to say in this game. So Ayton was exactly what you want him to be. I would say he was the Suns' best player in this game. Maybe some of the last few minutes, the scoring burst that Devin Booker brought might have put him over the top. That shouldn't have been necessary. The Suns should not have had to get that anxious late in this game, but this was a Deandre Ayton game. He was the best player on this team, and he looked like he did at moments during that Lakers series, during that Clippers series, where you are reminded how impossible it is to do anything against this Suns team on either end. And I really want to highlight that because this was his best game, I think, on both ends of the floor. He, on defense, his positioning was perfect. You could tell he was mentally engaged. You could tell that he had the energy behind him that I was talking about. And he's so smart about knowing which shots he needs to contest, which shots he doesn't need to contest. That's part of why the block numbers have never been incredibly high for him. He knows that he can affect attempts without getting in somebody's face. He knew that this team, something I talked about yesterday, was just identifying exactly what the matchup necessitates from him and doing that to a very high degree. And that's really something he did today. He knew, look, I'm going up against Jakob Poeltl and Drew Eubanks. I don't necessarily need to be, jumping out of the gym tonight because those guys are ground bound and not very athletic anyway. So I can focus on positioning and strength and rebounding and positioning and all that stuff. And that's what he did. And that's how he excelled. On the offensive end was where he really was getting a lot of attention from fans online. And, you know, rightly so. He only had 3 assists, so that undersells it a little bit. But I think we should start by maybe rewinding a little bit just to understand the impact that Ayton's game tonight actually had and what we've really seen for months now. I mean, most of the calendar year of 2021, the Suns have been defended in this way when Ayton is on the floor. In the pick and roll, I mean. Chris Paul or Devin Booker sets a high screen. They come around it either direction. Could be a side pick and roll, whatever. Teams will. I mean, this is even what Denver tried to do before they got smoked trying it. The team will blitz Booker or Paul with the ball handler, the big man out on the perimeter, tagging the ball handler. The weak side or strong, whatever, there will be a low man rotating over to protect the rim. There might be that strong side defender reaching in and kind of messing with getting in the lane of Booker or Paul. And the obvious thing, I mean, this is how Draymond Green has made a living on offense to a large degree, is teams blitz Steph Curry because they want to have 2 guys in his face. Curry slips that pass in to Deandre, to Draymond Green, and Draymond's able to find a cutter or a perimeter shooter. And when Klay Thompson's one of those guys, obviously it looks a lot prettier, and you can't guard that, right? I mean, that's how when the Warriors get really desperate, when they're really, backs against the wall, that's what they do because of the attention that those ball handlers are getting. Now, in this case, the Suns are getting defended that way because teams are daring Deandre Ayton to do something because he's the part that they are basically making a bet that they can beat, right? I mean, nobody thinks Draymond Green can't make that pass, but the teams defending the Warriors, there's no other choice. In this case, it's making a calculation that DeAndre Ayton having to make a play is the best option when the other options are Booker or Paul getting an open shot or the Suns floor spacers getting open threes, Crowder, Bridges, Johnson, etc. So what DeAndre Ayton was able to do tonight was beat that, was make that bet fail, was make that a losing proposition for the San Antonio Spurs. Booker and Paul did a great job of getting him the ball, and he was either dribbling to the basket to get a shot. You saw that a lot. He took 16 shots. That was the most on the team up until the very end of the game when Booker took a few. And he was able to, or he was able to read the defense and make a smart pass. This actually was going on last night as well. I didn't necessarily highlight it a ton in my show. I didn't get into the details of his performance in that way, but I recommend Kellen Olson's piece over at Arizona Sports. He got Monty to talk about it a little bit and wrote that piece on Sunday night. So we saw that up to, another level tonight. And it's pretty obvious if you're listening to me explain that, why that's such a big deal, because that takes away a very key and common way that defenses have been attacking the Suns. And Chris Paul can play with a player like that very, very capably because that's exactly the type of guy that Blake Griffin became as he developed as a player and a really huge weapon. And that's how he became an MVP candidate, was that playmaking aspect of his game really took off and jumped up to another level. I'm not saying DeAndre Ayton is going to become, Blake Griffin or Nikola Jokic or anybody like that as a passer, but it makes it so that the defense no longer has that option in their back pocket. So I can't say enough good things about this DeAndre Ayton game.